The world knew no sun. For 100 years darkness reigned. A thick, unending twilight covered all lands. People were born in shadow. They lived in shadow. They died in shadow. The old ones spoke of a time of light. They spoke of a brilliant, warm sun. Younger generations thought these were just tales, myths whispered around dying fires. Hope was a fragile thing. It flickered like a weak candle in a vast, dark room. The cold bit deep into bones and spirits. Life was a struggle for warmth, for food, for a reason to endure the endless night. Generations lived under this oppressive sky. The stars themselves seemed dim, distant memories. Children drew suns with charcoal on cave walls. They imagined warmth they had never felt. The elders remembered. They remembered the golden light. They remembered the green fields. Now only shades of grey and black existed. The world was muted. Its colours were stolen. The perpetual gloom seeped into hearts. It made them hard. It made them cold. Survival was the only song sung in the desolate villages, scattered across the land. Then the earth itself began to tremble. The great mountain, known only as the Dragon's Tooth, shuddered. It had slept for centuries. Now it stirred with a terrible anger. Deep within its stone heart, something ancient moved. A low rumble grew. It became a deafening roar. The ground split open. Rivers of molten rock, like blood from a wounded giant, poured down its slopes. Ash and smoke billowed into the already dark sky. It made the darkness even thicker, even more terrifying. The air grew hot, heavy with the scent of sulfur and burning earth. From the fiery heart of the eruption, a shape emerged. It was vast, terrible, and magnificent. Scales like obsidian catching the lurid glow of the lava. Wings like a storm unfurling to their immense span. Eyes like burning coals piercing the oppressive darkness. Ignis, the great dragon, was awake. The legends were true, the whispers were real. A power ancient and terrifying was unleashed upon the world. The volcano's fire was its herald. The dragon's roar was its declaration. The age of quiet despair was over. A new age of fiery terror had begun. Ignis's awakening was not gentle. It was a storm of fire and fury. The dragon soared from the burning mountain. Its shadow fell upon the blighted lands. Where its gaze landed, destruction followed. Rivers of fire, born from its breath, scoured the earth. Forests, already grey and lifeless, turned to fields of ash. Villages that had clung to existence for a century vanished in moments. The screams of the dying were swallowed by the roar of flames. There was no escape. There was no mercy. The dragon seemed a creature of pure, unadulterated rage. The air itself became an enemy. It was thick with smoke. It burned the lungs. It stung the eyes. Embers rained down like a deadly snowfall. They set rooftops ablaze. They ignited the dry, brittle crops. The few remaining sources of water turned foul. They were choked with ash and soot. Famine, already a constant companion, tightened its grip. The darkness was now filled not just with cold, but with the heat of infernos. The land wept tears of fire. The people despaired. Their fragile hope, nurtured for so long, was incinerated. Chaos spread like a wildfire. Communities, once bound by shared hardship, fractured. Fear made men cruel. Neighbor turned against neighbor for a scrap of food, for a safe place to hide. The dragon's terror was a catalyst. It brought out the worst in humanity. Warlords rose from the ashes. They promised safety in exchange for servitude, but no one was safe from Ignis. Its attacks were random. They were devastating. The land was a canvas of ruin. Ignis painted with strokes of fire and shadow. The dragon's presence changed everything. The familiar patterns of the long night were shattered. The quiet dread was replaced by active terror. No journey was safe. No shelter was secure. Ignis, the fiery calamity, became the new, terrible god of this sunless world. Its roars were prayers answered with devastation. Its flight path dictated life and death. The world, already broken by darkness, was now being systematically unmade by fire. The age of Ignis was an age of burning. It was an age of despair. The people had forgotten the sun. Now they only knew the fire. In a small, hidden village lived a young warrior. His name was Kael. He was born into the darkness. He knew nothing of the sun's true light, yet a fire burned within him. Not the fire of destruction like Ignis, but a fire of determination, a fire of defiance. He had seen too much suffering. He had watched his people cower. He refused to let his world die. He refused to let Ignis be the final word. Kael was strong. His eyes held a glint of the dawn his ancestors spoke of. He trained in the old ways. Kael was not just any warrior, he was the keeper of a relic. an ancient blade passed down through his bloodline. It was called the solstice blade. Its metal was strange. It was cool to the touch, even in the heat of a forge. Legend said it was forged in the heart of a fallen star. It was said to yearn for the sun. In the oppressive darkness, the blade emitted a faint, almost imperceptible glow, a soft, warm light, a promise of what was lost. Kael felt its power. He felt its sorrow. The elders of his village saw the dragon's wrath. They saw the growing despair. They looked to Kael. They looked to the solstice blade. They believed he was their last hope. A prophecy, old and faded, spoke of a hero who would wield a blade of light, a hero who would challenge the darkness. Kael listened to their words. He felt the weight of their expectations. It was a heavy burden, but he would not falter. He would take up the blade. He would face the dragon. With a heavy heart, Kael prepared. He strapped the solstice blade to his back. Its faint light was a beacon in the gloom. He bid farewell to his people. He knew he might not return. The path ahead was filled with peril. Ignis was a force of nature, a creature of immense power, but Kael had something Ignis did not. He had hope, he had the love of his people, and he had a blade that remembered the sun. He stepped out from his sheltered village. He walked into the burning, shadowed world. His quest had begun. Kael followed the path of destruction. It was a trail of scorched earth. It led towards the Dragon's Tooth mountain. The air grew hotter with every step. The ground crunched under his boots. It was covered in a thick layer of ash and cinders. The silence was eerie. It was broken only by the crackle of distant fires or the mournful cry of the wind. He saw a land transformed. Once familiar forests were now skeletal remains. Rivers ran black with soot. The world was dying. His journey was not unchallenged. The dragon's fire had awakened other things. Lesser creatures of flame and shadow stirred. Fire sprites like malicious sparks danced in the ruins. They tried to lead Kael astray. They whispered promises of warmth that led to fiery traps. Ash hounds with eyes of burning coal hunted in packs. Their howls echoed in the desolate wastes. Kael fought them with the solstice blade. The blade sang as it cut through the darkness. Its faint light repelled the creatures of shadow. Each battle tested Kael. Each victory hardened his resolve. He learned to read the signs of the broken land. He learned to navigate by the glow of distant fires. He met other survivors. Small, desperate groups hiding from Ignis. Some were broken. They had lost all hope. Others offered what little help they could. A piece of dried meat, a sip of precious water. They saw the solstice blade. They saw the determination in Kael's eyes, a flicker of hope rekindled in their hearts. Kael was a symbol, a solitary light moving through the overwhelming darkness. He pressed onward, relentless. The dragon's tooth loomed larger each day. Its peak was wreathed in smoke and fire, the source of the world's suffering. Kael knew his greatest challenge lay there. The lesser creatures were mere obstacles. Ignis was the true test. The solstice blade felt heavier, or perhaps it was the weight of the world's fate. He did not shy away. He climbed, he endured. The heat was intense, the air was thin. But Kael's spirit was a forge. It burned hotter with every trial. Section 5. Whispers of Betrayal. As Kael neared the volcano, he found an ancient hidden shrine. It was miraculously untouched by the recent fires. Carvings covered its stone walls. They were old, very old. They depicted dragons, not as destroyers, but as guardians, protectors of the light. The carvings showed dragons soaring in sunlit skies. They showed dragons revered by people. This was a history Kael had never known. The stories he heard were only of destruction, of fire and terror. This shrine told a different tale, a tale of a time before the long night. Among the carvings, one image stood out, a magnificent dragon, larger than the others. Its scales shone like gold in the depiction. It was shown beside a sun symbol. Below it, smaller figures seemed to attack it. Not with weapons of war, but with symbols of magic. Dark, twisted runes. Kael touched the carving. A faint whisper seemed to echo in his mind, a feeling of immense sorrow, a profound sense of betrayal. He realized the great dragon in the carving was Ignis, or an ancestor of Ignis. He spent hours in the shrine. He studied the ancient texts. They were written in a long-forgotten tongue, but the solstice blade pulsed faintly. It seemed to help him understand. The story unfolded. Ignis, or its line, was a guardian of the sun's passage. It ensured the balance of light and dark, but it was betrayed. Sorcerers, lusting for power, sought to control the sun. They could not. So they sought to imprison its guardian. They cursed Ignis. They bound its spirit to the earth's core. They stole the sun from the sky. The truth struck Kael with the force of a physical blow. Ignis was not inherently evil. Its rage was not mindless. It was the fury of a prisoner, a guardian betrayed and tormented for a century. The volcanic eruption was not its choice. It was a breaking of its bonds, a violent, uncontrolled release. The destruction was a symptom of its pain, its long suffering. Kael looked at the solstice blade. He had come to destroy a monster. Now he wondered if he was meant to free a savior. His mission had changed. The dragon was a victim too. Section 6. At the volcano's heart. Kael reached the summit of the Dragon's Tooth. The crater was a vast, terrifying maw. Rivers of lava flowed within it. The air shimmered with intense heat. Smoke choked his lungs. In the center of this inferno lay Ignis. The dragon was immense, far larger than he had imagined. Its scales were dull, coated in soot and ash. Chains of dark energy, remnants of the ancient curse, still clung to its form. They pulsed with a malevolent light. Ignis was not soaring in triumph. It was trapped. It was in agony. The dragon sensed Kael's presence. Its massive head lifted, its eyes like molten gold fixed on him. There was no malice in its gaze, only pain, and a deep, weary sadness. It let out a low rumble, not a roar of aggression, but a sigh of despair. Kael felt a strange connection to the beast. He saw not a destroyer, but a fellow sufferer in this blighted world. The ancient betrayal echoed in the desolate landscape. The volcano's heart was a prison, not a throne. Kael drew the solstice blade. It shone brighter here. It resonated with the dragon's trapped energy, and with the faint, lingering magic of the sun it once guarded. He could feel the curse. It was a cold, heavy presence. It clung to Ignis like a shroud. It was the source of the darkness that plagued the land. The sorcerers who cast it were long dead, but their evil lived on. It lived on in the dragon's torment. It lived on in the sunless sky. This was the moment of truth. Kael could strike. He could try to end the dragon's suffering, and perhaps end its destructive rampage. That was his original quest. The world expected it, but the shrine's knowledge changed him. The whispers of betrayal resonated deep within his soul. He saw the chains of dark magic. He understood. To kill Ignis now would be another betrayal, another injustice. He had to make a choice between vengeance and redemption, between ending a life and healing a wound. Section 7. A blade to heal, not to harm. Kael looked at Ignis. He saw the pain in its ancient eyes. He saw the dark chains that bound its spirit. He remembered the carvings in the shrine. Ignis was a guardian. It was betrayed. Its rage was born of a century of torment. To slay the dragon now would be to compound the tragedy. It would not bring back the sun. It would only silence a victim. The solstice blade hummed in his hand. It felt warm. It yearned not for blood, but for release, for justice. He made his decision. He would not be an executioner, he would be a liberator. He stepped forward towards the immense dragon. Ignis watched him, wary. It did not understand. Kael raised the solstice blade high, not in a striking posture, but as an offering, as a key. He focused all his will, all his hope. He channeled it into the blade. The sword pulsed with a brilliant white light. It was a light the world had not seen for 100 years, a light that spoke of dawn. The light from the solstice blade lanced out. It struck the chains of dark energy, the chains that tethered Ignis to its fiery prison. The dark magic recoiled from the pure light. It hissed, it writhed. But the blade's power was too strong. It was the power of forgotten sunlight. It was the power of a hero's conviction. One by one, the shadowy tendrils shattered. They dissolved into nothingness. Kael poured all his strength into this act. Sweat poured down his face. His muscles screamed, but he held firm. With a final blinding flash, the last chain broke. Ignis was free. The dragon let out a roar, but this was not a roar of rage. It was a roar of release, of gratitude, of power reclaimed. It slowly rose to its full height. Its scales seemed to shimmer, shedding the ash and soot. The oppressive weight of the curse lifted from its spirit and from the land. Kael fell to his knees, exhausted, but a smile touched his lips. He had chosen well. He had chosen hope. Section 8. The Dawn Unchained. As Ignis was freed, a profound change swept through the dragon. The dullness of its scales vanished. They began to glow with an inner light, first a soft amber, then a brilliant gold, the color of the rising sun. The dragon stretched its massive wings. They were no longer instruments of terror, they were instruments of majestic power. Ignis looked at Kael. Its eyes, once filled with pain, now held wisdom and a deep, ancient gratitude. It dipped its head in a gesture of acknowledgement, a thanks to the small warrior who dared to understand. Then Ignis turned its gaze to the sky, the dark, oppressive sky that had smothered the world for a century. With a mighty beat of its wings, the dragon ascended. It climbed higher and higher. It flew towards the impenetrable roof of darkness. It was a golden comet against a black canvas. As it reached the peak of its ascent, Ignis unleashed a torrent of pure golden fire, not the destructive fire of its rage, but a cleansing fire, a fire of renewal, a fire that tasted of sunlight. The golden flame struck the dome of magical darkness. The ancient curse, already weakened by the breaking of Ignis's bonds, began to crack. Fissures of light appeared in the oppressive gloom. The light spread. It tore through the century-old night. The darkness shattered like brittle glass. And then, for the first time in 100 years, the sun's rays pierced through. Timidly at first, then with growing confidence, light, warmth, color, they flooded back into the world. The long night was over. The people below looked up in disbelief. Tears streamed down their faces. They felt the sun's warmth on their skin. They saw the blue of the sky. Children who had only known darkness stared in wonder. The world was reborn. The shadows receded. The land, scarred but not dead, seemed to sigh in relief. The return of the sun was a miracle brought forth by a dragon, and by a warrior who chose compassion over vengeance. The dawn had finally come, unchained and glorious. Section 9. Ignis, the morning star. With the darkness vanquished, Ignis did not vanish. The great dragon circled in the newly lit sky. Its golden scales shone brilliantly in the sunlight. It was a magnificent sight, a symbol of the new dawn. It was no longer a creature of terror, it was a beacon of hope. The people watched in awe. They understood. Ignis was not their enemy, it was their savior. The guardian had returned. The balance was restored. The dragon's fire had once brought ruin. Now its light brought life. Ignis became a legend reborn, not as the harbinger of chaos, but as Ignis the morning star, the one who heralded the sun. Stories of its betrayal, its suffering, and its liberation spread across the lands. Kael, the warrior with the solstice blade, was hailed as a hero. He had faced the fire. He had understood the truth. He had made the choice that saved them all. But Kael sought no reward. He knew the true victory was the light in the sky and the hope in people's hearts. The world began to heal, slowly but surely. Green shoots pushed through the ash-covered soil. Rivers ran clear once more. Villages were rebuilt, not in fear but in optimism. The sun's warmth nurtured life. It also nurtured spirits. Laughter returned to the land. Songs were sung. Songs of the long night, songs of the fiery awakening, and songs of Ignis, the golden guardian. The dragon would often be seen soaring high above, a watchful protector, a reminder of the light they had regained. Kael returned to his people. He laid the solstice blade to rest, its purpose fulfilled. He taught the children about the sun. He told them the true story of Ignis. He helped rebuild. He helped heal. The world was forever changed. The memory of the darkness remained, a reminder of what was lost and what could be lost again. But now they had the sun and they had Ignis, a guardian in the sky, a symbol of enduring hope, a promise that even the longest night must eventually give way to dawn.